journalist et media. But depuis un pouvoir, you can disregard et ça pas bon. C'est un bail qui bout de bout. That has to stop. Oui. Mais nous allons continuer cette liste. Nous ni monsieur Guibion Ferdinand. Oui, et puis bon matin là, il vient parler sur l'école. Oui.
L'école si vous avez ouvert.
Right?
L'année un parent qui pas plaît. Puis moi dis pour l'être yon teacher maman il a joué 8 jours l'école pour moi. Right? And the Friday is for the teachers planning. Bon, ça pour moi ça pas fait sens.
Right.
C'est même salaire teacher a joué. Salaire pas so après dit c'est cheating the nation. Puis si pas fait sens, curriculum n'a pas changé, right? Il c'est même bail là cette liste. Just imagine la même bail là, mais dans l'école 8 jours pour un mois. Et teacher même qui a joué 4 jours. Laisse ces jours qui ça y a fait payer.
Non. Like, je essayer d'expliquer ça.
Oui, madame, oui, c'est sénateur Guibion Ferdinand, right? So, nous make sure nous right. Et puis c'est lui qui Mikoud South, right?
Oui.
Et pour contester contre Premier ministre là.
Oui.
Oui, so c'est oui, c'est right now là même élection ça calé là. Oui, c'est un homme là qui cite la plus chaud avec la montée Guinness PM là.
Il était chaud dernière élection.
Il était chaud dernière élection.
Pour ça, on est plus chaud toujours.
Il est plus chaud pour ça.
Oui.
Oui, so vous avez préparé pour ça.
Oui, mais mon expérience après ça. Il y a un débat moi ça apprendre.
Et quand on dit ça, chaque monde qui a demandé mon clip là, moi ça voyé cette liste puis moi même pas qui laisse non qui chaque number pas save so ça circulation tout partout tout là vous aurez jeune nous d'être là pour faire un blast.
Oui.
OK, bonjour cette ici, bonjour tout le monde qui a suivi le programme là.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Yadi and Jaime. Thanks for having us here.
Yes.
First of all, I'll tell you, we must understand that the media is an important part of communication and education. And upai join moins kaisi away from media, in government or out of government. Even before I was a politician, I've always been very willing to cooperate with the media, even when things were not in my favor as a professional. So that's a very good point you made. Yadi made a statement just before we started there on the issue of reopening of school. Now this morning I am here to just make a very simple point. I don't think we should beat up the Ministry of Education officials too much. I'll tell you why. Yesterday morning there was a briefing by the Chief Education Officer, ça c'est Chef Éducation, the Permanent Secretary of Education, and the CMO. Yadi Jai Mokwe, c'est officier ministre qui a fait SAIOP en bas condition nous là présent. C'est pas pour moi venir faire case bio, mais on est pour dire la manière. Yesterday morning we got the important information that you were talking about. There are two options. You dis yon pour l'école ouverte, maman kay l'école yon jour on dit dans yon jour dehors, alternate instruction. Like l'année en deuxième option que maman kay aller tous les jours et à partir vendredi. Now Yadi had made a point that the teachers may not be at school. It's actually not so. The teachers will be at school all the time. It's just that the arrangement, some of the students will be split into two groups. So l'année si ni 400 mamans à l'école là, c'est pas toutes 400 qui sont à l'école à même jour because of social distancing. So while the children are rotating, the teachers are also actually going to be there every day. And a little bit later, I'm also going to make a point that I believe all the conversation about reopening of school, people are asking questions about the teachers, the students and the parents. Mais ces teachers ex moun qui ka travailler à l'école là, en chaque moun ka oublié yo. Et que là yo ka quoi yo ka joindre ex ça pas oui. But our essential issue here, I'm here representing the leader of the opposition and the Labour Party. Nous n'y seul fundamental issue avec l'école ka ouvert. And that is an issue we have had before. Si vous changez y a dit Epijaim depuis 2016 toute l'école ka ouvert, the first week of school, the first day or the first week of school, we've always had a lot of difficulty. toutes les l'école ouvertes, l'année d'autres à l'école qui pas jamais parlé, et puis last minute preparation. That is one of the issues. And the second issue is post-COVID. We know there's going to be a challenge. Depuis March, l'école a interrupt. Depuis March, we had an arrangement for CXC and common entrance. I think it worked out okay, although we had issues with the online instruction. Mais au passage, dis-moi, ça c'est le premier gouvernement ça fait by préparation pour l'école. While I give a lot of credit to the professionals in the Ministry of Education who are trying, but we have to agree that the government, central government, has not done enough to give the necessary support to ensure that parents are comfortable sending their children back to school in September. Moi, je suis à l'école aussi. Moi, je suis à la secondary school en septembre. Et puis, moi, as a parent, as an ex-principal, ex-teacher, moi, je suis dans l'école là, et je suis as a parent.
Yes.
Et moi, je suis pas assis tout bas en place. Nous avons un ministre qui a try best yo, moi ça va yo pièce criticism pour ça. Mais l'année c'était bail. Tell me about d'autres example. After COVID, I remember the minister for tourism was here some time ago, and he said about 15,000 people lost their jobs. Et puis moi quoi 2000 have travail. So we have about 13,000 people who are out of work from the tourism sector only. Ça pas même include lot sectors, farmers who have lost income, tout le monde can struggle. So if people have to put their children back to school, the central government needed to have taken that into consideration. Aujourd'hui, nous jouons a loan from IMF a few months ago, about 75 million, right? Interest free. Gardez côté nous avons mis l'argent ça. Moi toujours dit from temps dernière élection, gouvernement ça l'a pas qu'à mettre assez priority en éducation. Education is like the outside child. Go on? According education is not on the front burner of the political agenda for the government. So post-COVID, we get a loan. How much of that has been injected into the education sector to prepare and make things available? Gades adasi baila ki nuka parents struggle. School books. So I live Castry à présent. Tout partout où moun try hustle, hustle, and some parents just can't buy the books. Has the government injected anything into assistance for bursaries to help parents who cannot buy books to make sure the children have books? The other one we have is facilities fees. Nous savons toutes l'école qui charge un bagay facilities fees, but that is somewhere the government could have stepped in and say, you know what, we have to reopen school. Let us waive the facilities fees. All right? And let the IMF money or whatever resources we have pay for that so the schools can continue to function. Right? Another area, the school feeding. L'animal maya dit, nous savons, c'est juste ça, bah, mauvais. Merci beaucoup, nous qui avons cette habitation, nous allons acheter dashi, nebe bagay. There are children who, their parents are struggling to put food on the table right now. And there is a school feeding program. Has the government injected anything additional to it? Can they beef that up to make sure?
And I remember this is something the company had on. Right?
Yes, they said they were going to double it.
Double it, yeah.
Like moi, dit ça en parlement avant, yo pas jamais double. Ça yo fait, yo mettez at transportation subsidies also here, you take double. You just tie flabo, tie labor mette flabo. There's really not much that has been done. And so these basic requirements that children need to be comfortable, I don't think that the government has touched. There's another one that we haven't mentioned, and that is the public transportation. Lema Michael l'école, we have tout by action, buses on the road. It's not every child in St. Lucia that the parents can afford a private bus contract for. You understand? Now some children are on the bus subsidy program. Si l'année 20 000 maman à l'école, et puis nous need 10 000 qui a point public bus. At a time like that, post-COVID, moi ton PS that parlé about not having children loitering, to try minimize contact with the general public. That's a good opportunity for the government to have stepped up the transportation subsidy program. Put more students on that program and assist them with getting to school and back. You understand? rather than just leave it as it is, and I can't hit the PS too hard when I heard her say, as we go along, we'll try to see how we can fix it. Mais si vous avez même vu l'école, depuis l'école ouverte, vous savez toute activité, chaque activité, school feeding, canteen, vendors, tout le monde en action, right? Mais si c'est même là, pas ni a reliable form of transport. En chaque dit, you can still boshi mais un flag car share ride. En chaque dit, après l'école, peut-être you pas l'argent pour payer bus, you can still try faire. Et tout ces bails ça a mettre ces mamans là at risk. Vulnerability. So I believe, whereas I don't believe we can say that the Ministry of Education officials are not trying their best, I have to say that they're trying, but central government has to provide the backing for what the ministry wants to do. And I also believe that even the drivers who are going to transport these children, as you connect safety protocols, as you can adhere to ça. Vous savez, maman a bêta. L'année bail, nous pas fait, mais maman a fait. Bon, si vous savez ça, on est pour plan pour ça. Now, there are a number of things I wanted to mention this morning. Yes.
I'd like to ask you, since you were a principal, so you know about, especially like the conditions of schools.
Yes.
Most of our schools right now, I'm talking about the building itself. Are they ready for students to re-enter school?
That is the next point I was coming to.
Yeah.
You must always take into consideration the physical plant, the school physical plant, and that includes the building itself, the classrooms, and all the things that make the school safe and ready for school. Over the weekend, I drove through the OG area. I attended a function there. 2 weeks before school reopens, they call primary school OG. A whole section roof la, some you just discover you understand? That school can never be ready in 2 weeks, and there's an entire block.
And if it's ready, the fact that they probably will paint and all these
fresh
things,
paint,
all that would be.
And we're talking about in a post-COVID situation. There's another one I will mention, and that one is very close to my heart. Moi toujours qu'à parler about ça. Yani presque 5 ans n'a parlé about ça because moi j'étais en situation micro secondary, a constituency minister, c'est l'école là moi j'étais mettre l'école. Là tenir problème et puis Western Bloc là et puis you demolish li. Ça mène un chai al cassé between principal minister ça news là. You know, I passed by last week, and it looks like they have awarded some company the job to rehabilitate the place, and nothing much has been done there. Ça c'est un whole block qui n'est pour monter là pour entire form 3. So vous voulez dire moi learning post-COVID, vous avez plus space à l'école là. That is why they have all the alternate, because they're trying to minimize the social distancing issues to give more space to the children. So as much space as you can get in the school, the better. So ça c'est un
a parent from Mikud is saying there is work going on at the Mikud Secondary School.
Yeah.
It is not close to completion. I think the ministry had enough time to complete the works. I think the noise and dust will really affect the students.
Absolutely. They be match nous pas l'école, right? Ministre éducation et gouvernement zani presque 6 mois pour faire tout ça pour faire, because there are no children at the school. These things could have been done if they were priority. That's pour ça que the education pas priority. She make a fait tout partout. Quoi ouais, c'est juste ça au passage.
Nous continuons de ministre à sous vacances.
Ça m'étonne. Est-ce que ça c'est un bon lait? Ou qu'à préparer pour voir maman vivre l'école. Tout le monde en département qui travaille wed, c'est pour qu'avoir PS là, pour chief là, ouais tout mettre l'école. Tout le monde a pas pressure qu'à try en faire arrangement. Côté oui. Where is the leadership?
Head là toujours si posé là.
Yes.
Quoi.
Because if I work for you, Yadi, and the company is under pressure, we have to supply additional stuff. Moi, quand je viens bon matin, ou là, ou pas ouais, ou quand dit monsieur let's work. Moi, as a worker, moi je motivated pour try plead, because moi leader moi, vous comprenez, can set the tone. If you want everybody to be on board and put their best foot forward, you as the leader, you have to set the tone. You're on vacation, and next week you come and talk some fancy talk, and the teachers going back to work on Monday, by the way. No, the teachers are going back on the 31st.
Oh, okay.
The students are going back on the 7th.
And the 7th.
So teachers have to report to work on Monday. Now, you got the lay union pali interest, safety of teachers. You got the union political to bagay. I hope that by Monday, when teachers go back to school, Remember, teachers are human beings too, Jaime.
Yeah.
Teachers have health issues. Any teacher, là yo vie ouvert l'école pour CXC et common entrance. Any teacher qui pas à l'école because you need issues like asthma, respiratory problems. So when teachers go back to school, the school plant has to be safe for them to operate. Moi c'est dire mettre l'école avec moi cadeau, l'année là moi même te gagné un shy problem because of problems the teachers have with their health because of the school environment. I have had to deal with that. And so while we talk about the students, yes, the parents are concerned about their children going to school, but the people at the workplace, like all lot nous parler about, it's where staff l'école là. Moun ka parler teachers. What about the janitors?
Janitors are the most.
Yeah, and that's
one there's text.
The ancillary staff. What about them? You need to deal avec toilet.
Et right now, like, you have high pressure.
Mais c'est ça.
Because yo qui là qui fait tout travail là.
Groundsman. Vous comprenez? Toutes ces moun ça, you need to make sure l'école a pas. Now, si you need toutes resources yo, et ou ba yo assez temps pour travail, moi savent 99% of the janitors in the school system work very hard, right? But if they do not have the time and the resources, you also putting them at risk. Now, I believe that the government needs to provide the resources and the support for the ministry. Do we have enough sanitizers at the schools? Do we have water? C'est un autre problème. Là, toujours un problème avec l'eau. Et si toutes ces écoles ont additional storage tanks?
Yeah.
Because si vous regardez mamai, wash your hands.
Do this.
Vous comprenez?
Comment l'école nous n'y a payé?
Nous avons about 21 secondary, et nous avons over 75 primary. So nous avons presque over 100 schools in total. Et nous avons infant primary, so nous avons over 100 l'école. But yeah, there's one more thing, the preschoolers, the early childhood centers. SOSR,
on the bread line.
this one is
Ticklish.
very, very ticklish because you're talking about toddlers 3 to 5 years or 3 to 4 years. They are done 2.5 years. Children in preschool. Pan pièce manière où ça ma preschool l'école et qu'on dit yo pas jouer, pas toucher, pas parler. They will do it because preschoolers the way they socialize, the psychology will tell you is through play, and because they play, they make a lot of physical contact. Now, you must make sure that there are a lot of important protocols in place to protect the children. But at the same time, you don't want them to feel they're going to school in a jail. They have to feel they can play, but you must ensure that the environment. Now, when the issue was raised, I think a parent called on yesterday and asked about the preschoolers, and I think the response the parent was given was that they're working with the early childhood department to see if they can put a plan in place. But a plan is not yet in place. That's what it sounds like. Now, I'm not going to blame the ministry because I believe they would have, I think the PS indicated that they sent a memo to the ministry on August the 3rd or the 4th. On August the 3rd, I think, yeah. Right? And the ministry responded on the 10th of August. So the technocrats in the ministry did their job, you know. You do tout ça besoin, you ba tout ça you comprendre. Mais on need to respond. So if they're still waiting for your support 2 weeks before school reopens, what are the parents have to go to work and they have their toddlers in preschool. The preschool administrators who have to make sure that the environment is safe. Qui manière yo kay ménager. So in education, you also have what we call special education.
I was just going to ask you, what about these? Because, you know, the preschoolers, at least, they will understand.
They
if you tell them to stop, they might just, listen and stop. But you have the special needs children who behave like it's a routine. These children behave a certain way. That's so where from you, it's a problem.
That's
so
right.
What is in place for them? Those children that deal with that routine now. How what is in there? What's in there for them?
Well, I'd like the minister to tell me, because as you've correctly said, these children who go to special education centers, that's why they call them special education. They need special care. They have special needs. There are certain things that are not normal for them, and you have to know how to handle it. And every time you have to provide special education, you require specialized training, specialized materials, specialized resources. We know in Vieux-Fort we have the special needs. In Vieux-Fort we have a number of other special ed schools in the north. Again, we get a sense that these centers are not totally prepared. And that is of concern to us, because these children are more vulnerable. Things can go wrong, and they are human beings too. And as an educator, we are very sensitive to the needs of children with special needs. Si gouvernement a mêlé ça. Encore me ka di, si vous savez, nous ka mettez ma vie à l'école post-COVID, I don't think I will ever come here and say that children should not be put in school. Education is important. Children have to go to school as much as possible. If we can put them in school, put them in school. We probably no still about a state of emergency. We are still under a state of emergency. So if you are reopening school under a state of emergency, you know that there are some things, some restrictions. And so you have to be extra careful what you do. Because one case can cause the whole system to go back and regroup. One case can cause school to close.
Because that is what I always wanted to ask, you know. Since the country is still under a state of emergency, why would school reopen under a state of emergency?
That's a question I think the Minister of Education should be answering,
and
the Prime Minister, because I am not thinking that it is impossible to have school under a state of emergency. But my issue is, make sure that whenever you decide to reopen school, which in my view should be at the soonest, that things are in place. Take time and show the country that you are making an extra special effort. Remember, you have extra special effort to accommodate tout qualité bagay pays qui pas priority, right? You have tout qualité she make aller tout partout qui pas priority. I don't see that same effort.
A bad state of emergency, and that mean drive so didn't right before.
Oui, na the border tout bagay.
So now when the SK,
but one of the biggest problems to me, they have less time in a classroom.
Yes, but I think one of the things I have to give a little bit of credit to the ministry for is that what they've done on the days where the children, on the rotation method, remember I told you they said there were two systems. When the children are not in school, so if they come on Monday and they are home on Tuesday, they also have what they call a blended approach. I think they have assignments, projects, and online learning for them while they are at home. So you probably just been call I home you
with the online learning. How many of them have that? All these things, as if nobody.
That's the issue.
These are the
issue.
Things relevant and effective right now. You must have the
resources.
The resources.
Now that's the issue. That's the issue.
There are some communities in St. Lucia who still don't have access to internet. The area itself. Right? They cannot even get a signal, not even for phone, you know.
And do the children even have the resources? And that's the issue. When the Chief Education Officer and the PS tell you that they have put in a blended approach and they have consulted various stakeholders and that's the best way forward, I don't want to doubt them, you know.
Right.
I think they're trying to do the right thing. That is why when I started, I said, when the technocrats in the ministry have a plan, they most of the time, we know that they've done what they had to do. The problem they have is the government backing up that plan. When you tell me children come to school on Monday and then they stay home on Tuesday and they'll do projects and online learning, SEO need laptops, internet pour you faire blended program. C'est ça qui question ça.
Tout le monde va faire ça.
Ou di monde qui gagne qui a ça. Ou tie program laptop. C'est ma la pani. Après on ça even on Friday in Miku South, I understand the district rep, the Prime Minister, is going to be giving I think 7 or 5 children digital devices because they did well at common entrance, the top whatever in each school. You mean to tell me that is the approach we take towards empowering children? When we were giving every single child that same privilege or to exercise that same right, because according to the UN Convention on the child, the rights of the child, one of the essentials is that the right to education is a right of every child. Upanipu segregate, prioritize, every single child, whether you are a millionaire's child or a poor man's child, you have a right to education. So you have a right to access the devices. So blended learning, that sounds nice. Children come to school on Monday, they stay home on Tuesday, and they have their laptop, they can do their work, their projects. Mais si yo pas ni, qui ça yo kay fait? Ou pour mettre en place, you know? Jimmy Fletcher had the island Wi-Fi thing well advanced for every single community to have Wi-Fi. the laptop program by now, every child would have had one. So blended learning say, all right. Mama even they call lady, took mama so many half, because that's what they do. Half come today, the other half. And the teachers come every day, by the way. Regardless the teacher you member même ni resources là. Moi connais teacher qui a struggle pour acheter un laptop. C'est pas faute yo ni famille yo ni mortgage yo ni bail pour faire. Et puis l'année l'école Wi-Fi là c'est every 5 minutes il part travailler. Even during CXC there was one of the days.
Just at the bandwidth too.
Yes, but because of the traffic.
But okay, say we didn't have no COVID. When you check the salary scale in St. Lucia, you know,
ask me about that.
Who you know the basic individual can't afford a laptop.
And teachers are not among the top paid public servants. I was in the teaching service for many years. Even as a principal, you don't even have personal allowances, nothing like that. So
no perks.
We know that the teacher, that is why I said when we talk about the students, we must remember we are putting human beings in the schools to take care of the children. And if the teacher doesn't feel safe, the teacher cannot function. If the janitor comes to work and feels you pani mask, you pani they don't feel safe. Now, somebody asked a question the last time about children with respiratory problems, because that happens. Anima maikini problem asthma. The protocol is if a child is showing symptoms and is not well, you take the child to the nearest wellness center. That's a health center, and most of the schools have health centers close to them. So have we. But the problem is, do the parents feel confident that these wellness centers are adequately equipped to provide the respiratory services in case a child with asthma starts to show symptoms?
But not even that too. When you check, all the respiratory services they have is more directed in the Castries Basin.
Yeah. So a child goes to
Victoria,
and the child is access, and the health service we all know in St. Lucia, the state of the health service.
And not just that, I mean a child acting up maybe with let's say the child has asthma or some other, lungs issue or whatever.
Respiratory problems,
Respiratory problem. Right? We've heard cases where people, being at the OKEU and they show signs of, respiratory problem, and they will just isolate them. So what will they do? Will they isolate those children?
Well, that's the point. If children come to school with pre-existing problems, you can't really tell a child because you have asthma you can't go to school. It's not fair. They said that they would have shields. They recommended the CMO. Again, presque toutes les CMO a fait recommendation. He right to serve. I'm not hitting her because she's correct. So she's recommending, instead of the regular mask, for children with respiratory problems. And some of the younger ones, they just can't keep the mask on their face. They recommending the face shield.
But who got the
because you're pas comfortable. Bon, combien face shield qui est available dans l'école là? You're telling children that they need to have those who can't wear the mask, that face shields are recommended, but are the face shields available? So it means you may be putting children in a situation where the best intention is there by the parents, the school, the ministry, but because the government, the central government, has not put in the requisite resources to back up the decisions, that the decisions look like they're not good ones. And I would be saddened to see that anybody would have to blame any official of the ministry or any teacher or principal because something goes wrong, and it's because the resources were not in place. So, Jordi a say 25th, yon simen teacher a vi l'école, des simen maman a vi l'école. Ek nou ka we akodi se la pani a se effort par gouvernement. Ek yo pas a di, oh, we didn't have the money. Tout sa yo ka di, we didn't have the money. We didn't have the money, but we have the money to do other things. And I'm saying the post-COVID relief, there was a loan of $75 million that the IMF gave us, interest-free, right? To do just that. It wasn't to pay salaries, right? But when you're building all these infrastructure, what do you call them, cement and concrete and so on projects, you basically paying people. You're basically putting people to work to pay them. Whereas there are essential services like education, where you can beef up all the things I mentioned there. School books, right? Bursaries for children to get books and parents. Transportation. give children more assistance, beef up the transportation system. That will give the drivers a little more. And a shy driver ki have paid a shy income because your parties are fair. That's a good time for you to put them back to work, right? Apart from the transportation system, you also have the feeding, the school feeding. The children go into school, and in this COVID time, the schools have canteens. And some of those canteens, you know, I don't want to say anything negative about them, but we know there are limitations. And the canteens also have to make, the canteen people have to make a bread. Right. So you need to make sure that there's a lot of additional effort to help make sure that the children go back to school, and the parents can feel that there's enough there. That is not perfect, but I believe I am comfortable, and I can send my child to school in September.
Yeah, but one question I would ask you again, I mean, with the whole COVID thing, and you know, the country has been on a lockdown for a long period of time, and we're approaching the 9th month of the year, which means 3 more months, right? And you know, a lot has been done with parents and students at home. And again, I mean, our economy is driven by tourism, and we open our borders back to the country where there's most COVID in the world.
Yep.
Do you think that it was a wise decision to at least reopen school, you know, or should we just let the year go by and let's see what happens and let's just start the new year 2021? Do you think it was a wise thing to open school?
First of all, reopening school, as I said, as soon as you can, the better, the sooner the better. Yeah. But if you have all those mitigating factors, you're talking about borders being open, visitors in the country, people, there's more interaction. Right. Once school is reopened, there are more, the children are now out there. Right. So you're increasing the interaction, the number of people interacting and the rate at which they interact. Because Danipli Mundo, we have thousands, we have what, how many thousands of students on the road, right? So it means you are increasing the possibility of contact. You are. And once you do that, there's always a higher risk. And as we know, children are a lot more free up there. They're not as let's say responsible sometimes, or as mature as those of us who will make sure we put our mask on. Children take more risks. That's how they are. And so once you put them back in school, first of all, a state of emergency is supposed to end at 31st of September, I think. Si vous really change state of emergency, one of the things the government could have done was to say, oh, you know what? As soon as the state of emergency ends, we will open school. Yes. Because then there are some other things that you could have done. But if you choose to go before you end the state of emergency, that's your prerogative. But do things that demonstrate that you are capable of putting children in school without much risk. Right now, I am not sure. There's another thing, support services. PSC called by just principal, teacher, janitors, and so on alone these days. You have a lot of other psychological issues. Now, because you poor while call the match, like you feel call according you need a problem, you need to transition. Because come moi you while call you habit you can all day. Their routines have changed. So bringing them back into the school system, especially the young ones, you almost have to do it gradually and prepare them. Now, for that to happen, you may need a lot of support, right? A lot of things could have happened between March and now that have put children in a very vulnerable and disturbing situation, counselors and all those things. Yeah. So that kind of support, somebody was asking whether there'll be nurses at the schools. Now, again, that may be a very important role because normally we don't have nurses at schools. But could it have been possible for the government to have ensured that that kind of service is available right there at the school because of what we talked about with all the medical centers? So again, I think it's an issue where you have to balance the thing. State of emergency, from the time the Prime Minister extended it for the 4 months in Parliament, we debated that and we did not want that to happen. We knew that there were other legislation that the Prime Minister could have used, right, to do all the things he has to do under a state of emergency. But he insisted he wanted an extension of 4 months. And we quoted some of the other alternative legislation he could have used, right? But he insisted. Now, il pas changé l'école over September. Back in March or wherever, when we extended, not March, in June or July, when we extended it by 4 months, PS Mundade, the Prime Minister, made l'école over September. So, we can improve l'école post in a state of emergency. Because in COVID, no really have money by Kali. So when you extend it by 4 months, one time, you have to take all those things into consideration.
Yes,
now, we call Kave, ek no still about state of emergency.
So,
Shy by, I still feel a shy by and say call pan plus.
so not bad at all. Who I mean,
Not cutting you short, eh?
teachers will
I
be.
think, that's not cutting you short. A while ago you said 31 September of 30 days.
My apologies. Until the last day of September. Yes.
Yeah.
So teachers-
30th, yeah.
Like you said, the students, they're home, and obviously they have adjusted to a new routine and going back to school, right? Now, we're not talking about autistic children, but you see, the routine is something that's sometimes very difficult to break.
Yes.
Now, when these children go back to school, it will take the teachers to some time, to get those children back into that new
Routine.
atmosphere too, because those teachers will have to spend a lot of time to tell the children, you cannot. Now those children are excited about going back to school, making their friends, to play, and because some of them still don't understand that it will not be normal.
Yeah.
So the teachers will have a lot to do, and the children themselves would have a lot of adjustments to do as well.
Absolutely.
You know?
Now that is part of school. I know, right? In the days we went to school, I'm telling you, a lot of our students, what they love most about school was to be able to meet their friends.
Yep.
Because now.
Interaction.
Socialization is part of school. That's how you learn to get along with people. That's how you learn to negotiate. A book fair buy, Jody, how fashion them as or makeup. Who can have sports to buy, all these things. Because the school is about socializing. It's the family is the first socializing agent. The next one is probably school, and then the church and all those other institutions. So it's not just going to school to do academic work and so on. It is also a socializing agent, and students will socialize. Now I know they have put restrictions for playing, and they staggered the lunch. I think the children are not all going out for lunch at the same time. We understand that, but they are children, and the only way you can protect them is if you put things in place for them, because they will try to behave normally. Children will want to hug each other. Say, normal. Hey, I haven't seen you for so long. You play hug. They have to remember, hey, you can't hug.
Yeah.
But if they are properly sanitized, the washrooms, for example, la pani pièce côté qui dangereux en toilette, qui pas bien sanitized, and you have hundreds of people using that thing during the day. That is something that has to be very, very carefully managed. That's where the water issue comes in. And I do not think that we can safely say that every school has done that. Binfield Comprehensive in Beaufort is a school. I noticed they're building a block on the eastern side, the eastern wing. And I am not even sure if that block will be ready. You understand? So again, that's additional space.
But don't you believe the hotels getting they get more assistance with regards to the reopening compared to schools? Because I notice all hotels have a nurse block. They have arrangements for nurses on compound.
Okay. And what about all the incentives that have been given to them?
Yeah.
What are the incentives given to the schools? That's the point, you know.
Yeah, the balance is not.
No. And remember, the hotels are private entities.
Yeah.
The school is the government
But they have
responsibility.
nurse quarters.
Exactly.
And a few people even text me that as well. Yeah, a lot
You
of
have
people.
resident nurses at the hotels. The school is a government. It's the responsibility of the government. It's as if you're a father, you have your family, right? You have your children at home. That's your duty to take care of them.
Yep.
You're there taking care of a community activity. It is your responsibility.
Someone that's in that field just sent me information. They say in 2018, according to Ectel, fixed broadband penetration rate was 18.1%. Mobile broadband was 45% in St. Lucia. How do you expect to have blended education? This system is flawed, not thought out.
Well,
and this person, trust me, this person,
I would not argue that.
This person,
yeah,
the person that's the person's field.
I would not argue that, because these things definitely speak to the need for us to increase access to technology and access to online learning. That's the point. That's what the Labour Party was doing prior to the last elections. That's what we did in the last term. Begin the process, increase the capacity of the whole country to access internet, as well as increase the capacity of every child to access technology and to use it for learning. We did not believe that it was enough to just improve computer labs at schools. It was more important to give children direct access. So from wherever they are and under whatever conditions, they can learn. Now that COVID has exposed us, we now realize it's now more important than ever to be able to give students that capacity that they do not have. Okay. PC upon a laptop.
Okay.
Now,
this
5 after 9 already.
Yeah, but this, right? Somebody said me that's interesting. Right? Invitation for tenders. Right? That's a ministry document.
Okay.
Invitation for tenders for electrical repairs. Oh, just now. Electrical repairs at the Sir Ira Simon Secondary School for academic year 2020-2021.
That's this year.
Right? The Ministry of Education and the tenders have to send that in before the completion is expected August 31st. They have to send it in by 4:30 on Tuesday, August 25th, 2020, which is today, right?
Okay.
Late tenders will be rejected. So if you didn't send it before, so that means they ain't go through it yet.
Tendering is still going on.
It's going on because today's the deadline. You have to approve and assign.
And then give the person time to complete
and as you will see, it's coming from the chair department and the board office of the permanent secretary or whatever.
Now, why should that happen when we have not had school since March? You understand? At Sir Ira is a secondary school. The only activity that would have taken place at Sir Ira was CXC in June, July. Why would that have to be done now? Are you telling me that you didn't have the money and you have the money now? Why is it that you now commissioning work in the two? And that's something that has happened. Even when I was a principal, I always had a problem with it. But I think in the last 4 years, it has been as bad as it ever was. Because I could see on the first day of school, at least, I was able to have a full day and start school. The children come to school and they have to go home, wasting time.
Yeah.
You know how much it costs you to put a child on a bus and give them lunch and everything to go to school? It's costing money.
Per child.
Per child. And then they waste a day, they go back home. Just because you didn't finish the electricals or the taps are not working or something that could have been fixed. So my central issue here, Yadi and Jaime, is that I believe it is the right decision by the Ministry of Education to try to ensure that children are in school as early as possible. Mm-hmm. Education is essential. We cannot keep our children home and not educate them if we can put them in school. Virtual school was tried and we know the challenges. Again, it's because of the decisions of the government that we struggle so much, because the capacity for them to access online learning was compromised. But as soon as you make the decision to put children back in school, only pour faire siwe ou bay teacher met l'école et tout l'autre monde ministria ça yo besoin pour faire bay la travail. If not, you're going to have a disaster.
Now, you know anything about that? Yadi, they came to my area, they had people come down to the school to give the students name for books and uniforms for some. They took people's info and had a lot of questions. Same questions asked in the census. After all the questions were answered, they said to wait for a call so you can collect the books at the school. Up to this day, school reopened soon and they have not contacted anyone with an update. What if parents are waiting and depending on these supplies? How will these kids go back to school on the 7th?
But that's another issue. Nowadays, I hear students have to go to district reps offices and all those places to apply for those kinds of things. When I was in the system, transportation subsidy, bursaries, all of those things were dependent on the child's situation. The child comes to you, you can see the child's parents can't pay the fees, ils viennent l'école avec une chemise tous les jours, même chemise là, ils pas ni livre. So you assess the child, you do an interview with the parents, you checked out the house, and you can say, okay, John is underprivileged, we put John's name down on the list to assist. And the school would recommend the children who require assistance. Not any district rep calling the friends the child of their friends. You understand? And that's what's happening. Even transportation was determined the same way. So right now it's a system that people are interfering with.
Yeah. Well, someone is saying, good morning guys, and to your guests. Shouldn't we be considering the way we deliver education and share knowledge? It seems to me that in the current COVID-19 environment, you need greater community involvement. How about giving more attention to the concept, each one teach one? We can meet to discuss.
That's great in theory. Pair tuition is fine. Sometimes we actually try it in school. You let those who know help those who don't know. But even with that, you must know what you're doing. It has to be properly supervised because children, they're not trained teachers. So pair tutoring and learning from each other is fine, but it's something that has to be properly structured. Yeah. And that's why you have school.
Okay, this person said, good morning YNJ and to your guests. The government early childhood centers, all plans are in place. The plans were sent in since in May. In addition, things are being put in place. Ministry personnel have already come to the centers to show us how to set up the classes. When the children come in, they will be tested for fever, wash, sanitize hands, and must have change of clothes to change them as soon as they come in after the triage, etc.
Well, I will not argue that. As I said to you from the beginning, I believe the Department of Education, they have been there a long time. C'est pas because gouvernement changé. The people have been doing their work. The issue is when they have submitted these plans, have they gotten the resources that are attached to the plan? Right. And I can argue there's one early childhood center, Zafe par Jordi, Diga Community Center was the only, the main preschool in the Diga community, in the constituency of the Prime Minister. Irani presque tout l'année, sa place na abandonné, moun ka servi pour urinate tout bagay. And where are these young children supposed to go to school? At somebody's private home? And that's the constituency of the Prime Minister, where he's trying to do roads and all kinds of things last minute to win elections, to try to beat me. You understand? But the preschoolers there, right, and it was run by a lady, Miss Kangal, she has had to go home and try to do the best she can. They closed, the place is just there, it's not being rehabilitated, nothing is being done. I wonder if it was in that plan, Yadi. If it, among those plans, if these preschools, early childhood centers were included.
What was said about the canteens in the schools and also the people selling on the outside?
Nothing was said from the yesterday's presentation. However, I believe that's a very important thing because remember, vendors have a livelihood and they come around the school. That's where they need to and I don't know if there are any standards or any meetings or anything that's been held with them, or if they just leave it to the principals to manage. School canteens that are run inside the school, normally there's a list by the school to the canteen manager. Some schools run their own canteen. Even there, I know the health department is supposed to be checking on the workers. They must have health certificates, they must be certified, and there has to be health safety protocols and practices at those canteens. I did not hear much discussion on that, so I will give the benefit to the ministry and say, I am hoping that they have put things in place for that, because that can be a problem in itself.
And what about the schools? Will students be schools with gates and fence? Will students be allowed to go out of the gate?
I suspect under the hours of school, they may have restrictions there, I suspect. But that's a very important issue. And what's even more concerning to me are the schools that do not have fencing. Right. Because where the school is not fenced, let's say my apprenti break you know, you have to be very careful because they can loiter, other people can contact them. So all these things, school safety becomes an issue there.
Okay, this person says, good morning, I am a parent. I will only believe all what is being said when I visit the school. Most schools should have been clean at least 1 month. Then the janitors come clean 1 week before. Also, I'm waiting for the school to call in all parents of the Denier Rivier Combined School for meeting on how we are going to work together for the being of our children. Another thing too, some teachers...
That's a very good comment.
Yes, yeah. Some teachers said to me they'll be doing janitorial work. Like they have to... Yeah.
The teachers?
Yeah.
It's not unusual. Teachers do a lot, you know. Teachers come to school, you say nurse, you say doctor, you say psychologist, you say janitor. And some of them, they just do it because they know it's necessary. But I don't know if we need to be putting them in that position, especially now with all that COVID thing about. People are very nervous. But again, if you put things in place, you will minimize that problem. Because as I said in the beginning, the health of the students is is of priority, the health of the workers at the school, the teachers, the janitors, the watchmen, the groundsmen, and everybody, is also important. So that is something that the ministry must watch, because teachers have health issues, they have families, and they must also be protected. And I'm sure the unions will be paying close attention to these issues. But we'll only know, Yadi and Jaime, we'll only know how well prepared we were. Let's see what happens from September 7th. You see the first week, le baila. Lo wanje machine in kwa road test. So when the
Test li pou e mane
le baila commencer, nous kay see samakadia exanuka concern about last year really kay fait. Because what I'm expressing there are my concerns and my anxieties about reopening school. I am hoping that, none of these things happen. But if they do, I believe, I'm saying up to date, it would have been because the government has not given enough support to the plans that the technocrats in the ministry have put in place.
Now, since you were the principal of the Mikud school, a parent from Mikud is saying students are not allowed to go out of the gates. Children must walk with lunch. Gates will be locked. Teachers are not allowed as well. That's for the Mikud Secondary School.
Well, thankfully that is being said. I know schools have their own arrangements, and that's something that is a little dicey. Different schools have different arrangements when it comes to that, but I can see why they would want to restrict the children. But under normal circumstances, while I was there were always vendors around, and the children would be allowed to go out, and those would purchase from the canteen and go out. Some of them even went home. Those from the village went home for lunch. So,
but sometimes you have to be logical about some of these things when government institutions put things in place. You really believe that teachers will stay on premises, or let's be logical. Sometimes, sometimes we have to.
No, you're right.
These are the real things. You watch a big man
with his vehicle.
If his vehicle, a big man in his vehicle, he live in there. You tell a man he can't leave the premises.
Yeah.
To me, these things are that's mediocrity.
Yeah. Even the planning, I heard some people asking about the Friday for the planning for the teachers. Teachers and principals will work that out. But clearly, Yadi, I lived in Deriso, right? I live in Deriso. I worked at Miku. If I wanted to go home for lunch, maybe because it's cheaper for me to go and eat my hot meal at home than to go and buy something, that would be a priority for me. So again, it will have to be worked out between the staff, to decide what works best for them. But the important thing is we must always try to protect ourselves and the children in the process. So there are a lot of things that will be tested, but I think it will happen when school reopens.
Okay, somebody just said the nurse at the hotel is part of the COVID protocol. The hotel cannot operate without a nurse. Well, we all know that. They are paid by the hotel, from what I know. Maybe all hotels must run if a nurse.
Fair enough. But that's a good model.
But with the COVID,
that's a good model. So if the hotels recognize the need for immediate medical personnel right there, a public institution where you have vulnerable people like children, that should tell you something.
Because even when they have spots,
the thing about it,
ambulance.
When they have spots and they're having attacks, they have to take that student. Sometimes a teacher who not trained in medical have to take that student and take them to the Victoria.
It's a special case, and sometimes you have ambulances, right? I remember for our sports, almost every time Miku had sports, and most of the schools, we would make sure we have an ambulance on site. So the child collapse or something happens, you don't have to transport the child too far. Now, that's because you have a special event. Now, right now with COVID, it's as if every day is a special event. Every day is a risky day. So I would expect that the government would have seen it fit to beef up all of those things at a time like that or like now.
They have made themselves clear. Just a week ago, if you were following our news, you realize, Miguel did some investigation where he called some of the certified hotels, and they stated that they would not. There's no bookings for the public.
Okay.
Which means that it's tourists, foreigners who come in. So all that is in place for people who come in. And we're talking about our children, being vulnerable, and they will be because of them traveling. So I honestly feel that should be one of the number one priorities. Safety, at whatever cost, especially with regards to our children. I feel the schools should have a nurse present. I feel so.
Jaime, it would not cost. Think about it. For 6 months, let's just say 6 months, it would not cost the government an arm and a leg to do some of those basic things I mentioned there. $10 million is peanuts based on the 75 million.
Right.
That which the minister had been boasting about that she has been receiving. Allocation of a meager amount from our IMF monies could have gone a long way to doing all the things we mentioned there, even for 6 months, right? By then you would hope that things would be back to normal.
Oh, just like when before we went back to normal, they had different phases in bringing the country back to normal for COVID. So they would have phase 1, phase
reopening
2
of school. That's correct. That's correct. And again, that's why I'm telling you, education priority. Because you have all those things in other sectors. Education is supposed to be your number one. That's why your human resource is growing. That's where you can build a country. Singapore, part any oil, nothing. Singapore and Canada, these countries are models.
I would say 3 of them are education, health, and agriculture.
Definitely, that's what keeps your country healthy. Agriculture feeds them, health keeps them their well-being, education makes them knowledgeable and helps them to take care of themselves. So, Professor, ou peut faire tout pont, tout build, tout sauver. If the people aren't educated and they're not healthy, you have no nation. You just have a set of
final comments.
Well, first of all, thanks and thanks for the extra time that we had. We started a little late, but I just want to say the Ministry of Education, I believe the technocrats have been doing the best they can. So we must be a little empathetic towards them. However, I believe the central government, through the minister and the policymakers, have to demonstrate that education is a priority at this time. Post-COVID, we should not be having all these anxieties going back to school. The government has to demonstrate, and the lead has to be taken by the Prime Minister and by the Minister. That is not a time for us to be hearing that the Minister is on vacation. You cannot be demonstrating leadership by being absent in a situation like that. Your presence and your leadership needs to show. And I believe that the schools reopening would be a good test for that. So let's wait to see what happens after the 7th. And I really hope that for the sake of the children and the teachers, that we have no major mishaps in September.
Yep. Well, is it Lucie?
Vietnam, they give you a question. Qui gagne who absent à présent? Qui gagne ça?
Oui.
So,
tu veux dire Lucie, nous allons des messages nous allons continuer by Thursday.
Yes.
Oui, nous allons continuer.
Yeah, man. All right, one love to the maximum. Des messages.
Tu veux
même les programmes Zafe, Nous.
Ensuite, Lucie.